The silence begins. The grand chamber of the Galactic Cooperative sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns, its crystalline dome refracting colors across the thousands of representatives seated in concentric rings. Species from across the known universe filled the chamber with a constant hum of translated conversations, diplomatic posturing, and the occasional burst of alien laughter. In the human sector, Ambassador Elena Chen sat motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the central podium, where High Speaker Vrex was concluding yet another dismissal of Earth's petition. 20 years of diplomatic service had taught her to keep her face neutral, but the slight tightening of her jaw betrayed her frustration. The Council has considered Earth's warning regarding the anomalies in the Arcturus sector. Vrex announced, his translucent appendages waving dismissively. Our scientists find no evidence supporting human concerns about spatial instabilities. The petition for evacuation of Council outposts is denied. Elena made no move to respond. This was the 17th human warning dismissed in the past 5 years. Behind her, her team of advisors remained equally still, their expressions carefully controlled despite the gravity of what they knew was coming. "Does the human delegation wish to speak?" Vrex asked, using the slightly condescending tone the Council had adopted for humanity over the century since first contact. Elena looked down at her console, where a single message glowed. "PR2SOCOL silence authorized. Implementation immediate." She stood smoothly, her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garb of other species. "The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision," she said, her voice clear and measured. "We have nothing further to add at this time." Without another word, she removed her translator pendant, an unprecedented breach of protocol, and placed it gently on her console. Around her, each member of the human delegation did the same. The silence that followed was more startling than any protest could have been. As one, the human delegation turned and walked toward the exits, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. Just before leaving, Elena paused and looked back at the chamber, her eyes sweeping over the confused council members. Then she was gone. "Most theatrical," Vrex commented after a moment of stunned silence. "The humans have always had a flair for dramatics. They'll return when they realize they need us more than we need them." But they didn't return. 3 days later, Council member Toril stared at the display showing communication blackouts spreading across human territories. What had begun as a diplomatic protest had become something else entirely. "Every human ship, station, and colony has gone silent," reported his aide, a nervous Voxian whose scales flickered with anxiety. "They shut down all standard communication channels. No distress signals, no trade negotiations, no diplomatic transmissions." "What about their ships?" Toril asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed the implications. "That's the concerning part," the aide replied, bringing up new imagery. "They haven't stopped. Human vessels continue to move throughout Council space, maintaining trade routes and military patrols. They're just doing it, silently." The display showed a human freighter dock-in at a Council station, executing perfect maneuvers without a single communication exchange. Another image showed a human military vessel responding to a pirate attack near a Council colony, coordinating flawlessly with 2 other human ships without transmitting a single command. "How?" Toril whispered. "No species can maintain complex operations without communications." "We don't know," his aide admitted. "But the Trade Guild reports that human merchants are still conducting business. They're just using written messages and prearranged signals. It's slowing things down, but not stopping them." Toril leaned back, his crest flattening in thought. "They're making a point," he muttered. "But what point?" In a small observation room overlooking the Council chamber, diplomatic analyst Kira Sen watched the emergency session with a mixture of pride and anxiety. As one of the few non-humans with extensive experience studying Earth cultures, she had been summoned to explain the inexplicable. "It's a form of non-violent resistance," she explained to the gathered Council representatives. Humans have used similar tactics throughout their history. They call it civil disobedience. This is far beyond civil disobedience, growled General Fax, the Council's military commander. We've detected unusual energy signatures from their colonies, activity patterns that suggest mobilization. Their ships are moving in formation across multiple sectors simultaneously, without any detectable command structure. Kira nodded. What you're seeing is only possible if they've been hiding their true capabilities all along. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For how long? Asked a council elder, their gelatinous form quivering slightly. Since the beginning, Kira replied. Consider this. Humans went from primitive chemical rockets to joining us in space within 50 years of first contact. We assumed they were quick learners, adopting our technologies. But what if they were developing their own paths all along in parallel? Paths we never noticed because we were too busy being condescending. On the main display, satellite imagery showed human colonies operating with unusual efficiency. Power grids optimizing automatically, agricultural systems responding to weather patterns without central direction, defensive systems activating and deactivating in perfect harmony. They've developed some form of decentralized command structure, General Fax concluded, his barbed tail twitching nervously. Perhaps even neural integration. That's impossible, objected Science Minister Yulo. Their neural technology was assessed as primitive just 3 years ago. They were still using external interfaces and crude implants. They showed you what they wanted you to see, Kira said quietly. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why humans adapted so easily to galactic society? Why they could learn any alien language faster than our translation software? Why their reaction times in space combat simulations exceeded biological limits? Before anyone could respond, an urgent alert flashed across the displays. In the Arcturus sector, where humans had warned of spatial instabilities, a massive rift had opened in spacetime, swallowing a small council research outpost, exactly as they had predicted. Send rescue ships immediately, ordered the council elder. Already done, General Fax said, zooming in on the imagery. But we weren't first. The display showed 3 human vessels already evacuating the outpost, working with mechanical precision to extract survivors before the rift expanded. No communications, no hesitation, no confusion. Just perfect coordination in the face of a disaster they had tried to prevent. Contact the human ambassador, the elder commanded. Tell her we're ready to listen. Kira shook her head. That's not how this works now. They tried talking. You didn't listen. Now they're showing instead of telling. Showing what exactly? Fax demanded. What you've been too arrogant to see, Kira replied. That humanity has been holding back. That they've evolved beyond what you thought possible. And most importantly, she pointed to the display where human ships were saving Council citizens from a catastrophe the Council had dismissed. That you need them far more than they need you. In her private chambers aboard the human flagship Resilience, Ambassador Elena Chen watched the rescue operation at Arcturus with grim satisfaction. Behind her, Admiral Takeda studied tactical displays showing human assets throughout Council space. Protocol silence is at 100% compliance, he reported. All human ships, stations, and colonies operating on neural sync. No external communications detected. Elena nodded, and the Council's response. Confusion turning to concern, Takeda replied. They've upgraded to alarm in the past 6 hours, especially after Arcturus. They're trying to track our ships, but without active signatures. They can only see what we let them see, Elena finished. She tapped a hidden interface in her sleeve, connecting directly to humanity's neural network. Instantly, her mind expanded across space, connecting with millions of other humans throughout the galaxy. No words, just impressions, intentions, and coordinated purpose. Are we ready for Phase 2? She thought into the network. The collective response came not as words but as certainty. Humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly what they had become while the Council wasn't paying attention. "Send the message to all human vessels," Elena said aloud, disconnecting from the network. "Begin the demonstration." Across Council space, human ships that had been moving with quiet purpose suddenly vanished from conventional detection. Not just communications but energy signatures, heat emissions, even visual profiles disappeared as humanity activated technologies they had developed in secret. The galaxy was about to learn what happens when humans stop talking and start acting. In the Council chamber, alarms began to sound. The silent demonstration. Commander Zarax of the Galactic Patrol stood frozen before the tactical display, his 4 arms crossed tightly against his armored torso. What had begun as a routine shift monitoring Council space had descended into barely controlled chaos over the past 12 hours. "Report," he demanded, eyes fixed on the blinking alerts spreading across the holographic map. "Sir, we've lost tracking on all human vessels," his second-in-command replied, voice steadier than her trembling. Trembling antennae suggested. One moment they were there, the next, nothing. "Ships don't just disappear," Zarax growled. "Check for sensor malfunctions." "Already did, sir. Systems are functioning normally." "The humans have gone dark. Completely dark. No communication signals, no engine emissions, no thermal signatures. According to our sensors, they simply don't exist anymore." Zarax's experience told him that was impossible. Every ship in space generated heat. Every engine left traces. Every life support system emitted specific patterns. The void of space might be vast, but it was never truly empty of information, except now, where human ships should be. "Visual confirmation?" he asked. "Intermittent only, sir." "Watch." The display zoomed in on the Centauri trade corridor. For a moment, nothing. Then, as if deciding to allow itself to be seen, a massive human freight carrier materialized on visual sensors. It cruised peacefully along its route for exactly 30 seconds, then vanished again, not jumping to FTL, not deploying any known cloaking technology, simply ceasing to register on any detection system. "They're toying with us," Zarax muttered, "showing us just enough to let us know they're still there." "Sir, new development at Proxima Station." The display shifted to show a Council research installation orbiting Proxima Centauri. To Zarax's astonishment, 5 human warships had appeared in perfect formation around the station. They weren't there to attack. Their weapon systems remained dormant, but their positioning was unmistakable, a defensive perimeter. "What are they defending against?" Zarax wondered aloud. "There are no threats in that sector." As if in answer to his question, the station's own sensors suddenly registered a massive energy surge approaching from deep space, a rogue quantum fluctuation that could tear the station apart. It was exactly the kind of phenomenon human scientists had warned about in their dismissed reports over the past year. The Proxima Station's automated distress signal had barely begun broadcasting when the human vessels moved in unison, deploying some kind of energy field that enveloped the approaching fluctuation. The deadly surge dissipated harmlessly within the field. Then, their task completed without a single transmission sent or received, the human ships disappeared from sensors once more. "They knew it was coming," Zarax whispered. "How could they possibly have known?" Dr. Kella Tuven had spent 15 years studying human neurophysiology, a field most of her colleagues considered a dead end for an ambitious xenobiologist. Now, as she stood before the hastily assembled Council Emergency Committee, those same colleagues were hanging on her every word. "The evidence was always there," she explained, her slender frame dwarfed by the massive projection behind her. "Human brains have an unusual capacity for what they call emergent networking, the ability to form complex systems from simple interactions." "Skip the lecture, Doctor," interrupted Counselor Vrex, who had been notably quiet since the humans had walked out of his chamber. "Explain how they're coordinating entire fleets without communications." Kella nodded. 3 years ago, I observed unusual quantum entanglement patterns in human neural tissue samples. When I reported my findings, suggesting they might be developing biological quantum communications. The Council's Science Directorate dismissed it as a statistical anomaly. She brought up new images, scans of human brain activity taken over the past decade, showing progressive changes that no one had bothered to investigate. They've been slowly augmenting their neural architecture, not with crude implants as we assumed, but with quantum-sensitive organics that grew into their existing neural structures. It wasn't detectable because we weren't looking for something that could evolve naturally. Are you suggesting, Council Elder Mez Tool asked slowly, that humans have developed some form of telepathy? Not telepathy as you understand it, Kella corrected. Something more precise. Their minds are linked through quantum entanglement, allowing instantaneous communication across any distance without detectable signals. What we're seeing now is the result of an entire species thinking and acting as a coordinated organism while maintaining individual consciousness. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How long have they had this capability? General Fax demanded. Based on my analysis, they'd been developing it for at least 50 years, Kella replied. But they've been hiding its full potential until now. Why reveal it now? Asked Counselor Vrex. Because you pushed them too far, Kella said simply. Humans have a remarkable tolerance for frustration, but even they have limits. You've dismissed their warnings, ignored their discoveries, and treated them as junior partners for too long. This silence isn't just a protest, it's a demonstration. Of what? Of what you've been missing while you were busy patronizing them. Admiral Takeda watched through the Resilience's quantum-shifted viewports as the pirate fleet approached the vulnerable Council colony on Vega Prime. The pirates, a coalition of rogue elements from 3 different species, had timed their attack perfectly, striking when the colony's defenses were undergoing scheduled maintenance. What they hadn't counted on was the human battle group that had been watching them for weeks. Initiate containment protocol. Takeda thought into the neural network. Instantly, acknowledgments flowed back, not as words but as certainty, 12 ship captains and their crews responding as one coordinated organism. For the watching Council observers on Vega Prime, what happened next would later be described as beautiful terror. 12 human warships materialized simultaneously around the pirate fleet, appearing from nowhere in a perfect 3-dimensional geometric pattern that left no avenue of escape. There were no warnings transmitted, no demands for surrender, none of the standard military protocols that had governed space combat for centuries. Instead, precision targeting disabled the pirates' weapon systems and engines in a synchronized assault that lasted exactly 9.4 seconds. Before the colony's defenders could even process what had happened, the human ships deployed shuttlecraft that boarded and secured the pirate vessels. The entire operation, from appearance to complete neutralization of the threat, took less than 3 minutes. Not a single word had been transmitted. When it was done, one human ship briefly activated a conventional communication system to transmit a simple text message to the colony. Prisoners secured. Threat eliminated. Repair your defenses. Then all 12 ships vanished from sensors once more. In the Council's Strategic Assessment Chamber, General Fax reviewed the footage from Vega Prime for the 20th time. It's not possible, he muttered. No fleet can coordinate with that level of precision without central command. Unless they're all part of the same command structure, suggested Kira Sen, who had been promoted to Senior Advisor on Human Affairs. Their neural network allows them to function as a distributed intelligence. Each ship captain maintains individual agency while simultaneously participating in collective decision-making. That kind of technology would transform warfare, Fax said quietly. If they wanted to, they could. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Every military analyst in the Council had run the simulations. If humans chose aggression rather than this puzzling defensive stance, the Council's forces would be overwhelmed within days. They're not interested in conquest, Kira assured him. If they were, we'd already be defeated. This is about respect. Respect doesn't typically involve terrifying demonstrations of superior technology, Fax observed dryly. It does when you've been ignored for a century, Kira countered. They tried talking. Now they're showing. A junior officer rushed into the chamber, her respiratory sacs pulsing with excitement. General, urgent update from the Arcturus sector. The main display activated to show the spatial rift that had destroyed the research outpost, the phenomenon humans had warned about. The rift was expanding, threatening 3 major council worlds in adjacent systems. Evacuation plans, Fax demanded. Impossible on the necessary timeline, sir. We're projecting complete destruction of all 3 systems within 8 standard days. Fax's expression hardened. Contact the human ambassador. Sir, they're still maintaining silence. No responses to any. Then find another way. Fax roared. They predicted this. They must have a solution. As if in answer, the display suddenly shifted to show new activity. A fleet of human vessels, larger than any previously documented, had appeared at the edge of the Arcturus rift. 50 ships moving in perfect synchronization, deploying devices of unknown design around the perimeter of the spatial tier. What are they doing? Whispered the junior officer. Before anyone could speculate, the devices activated simultaneously. A network of brilliant energy fields materialized between them, containing the rift within a geodesic structure that pulsed with technologies the Council's scientists couldn't begin to identify. Slowly, visibly, the rift began to contract. They're healing space-time, Kira breathed. They developed technology to repair quantum rifts, something our scientists said was theoretically impossible. Fax watched in silence as humanity demonstrated yet another capability they had developed while the Council wasn't paying attention. The implications were staggering. If humans could heal rifts in space-time itself, get me the Council elders, he ordered. All of them, now. As his staff rushed to comply, Fax continued watching the human fleet working with impossible coordination to save Council worlds that had dismissed their warnings. The irony wasn't lost on him. And find me someone, anyone, who can get a message to the humans, he added quietly. Tell them we're ready to listen. Breaking the silence. The emergency council chamber had never been used at full capacity before. Designed for extreme crises, its amphitheater-style seating could accommodate representatives from all 387 member species simultaneously. Today, every seat was filled, and the usual protocol of speaking in order of seniority had been abandoned in the face of growing panic. The humans have deployed vessels along our borders. Their ships appeared inside the defensive perimeter at Ta City. Impossible. They've established quantum-locked observation posts in 17 strategic sectors. The cacophony of translated voices echoed through the chamber until High Speaker Vrex raised all 6 appendages for silence. His usual authoritative demeanor had been replaced by something rarely seen in council leadership: uncertainty. Order, he called, though his voice wavered. We will have order. Gradually, the chamber quieted. At the central podium, Vrex turned to the small group of specialists who had been studying the human silence for the past 2 weeks. The council recognizes Science Director Ulo for the presentation of findings, Vrex announced. Ulo stepped forward, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lights. For centuries, she had been the council's most respected scientist, responsible for evaluating and categorizing new technologies from member species. She had personally dismissed human research as derivative 4 times in the past decade. Honored representatives, she began, her voice modulated to Project Calm. I must report that our understanding of human technological capabilities has been fundamentally flawed. Murmurs spread through the chamber. A comprehensive review of historical data reveals a disturbing pattern. Ulo continued, activating the chamber's holographic display. Humans have been systematically understating their technological advancement since first contact. The display showed a timeline of human development alongside council assessments. The disparity was striking and increasingly divergent over time. What began as a minor gap in the early years has become an exponential curve. Based on what we've observed during their silence, humans are approximately 200 years ahead of where we believe them to be technologically. The chamber erupted in surprised exclamations. "How is this possible?" demanded a council elder. "Our monitoring systems. We're looking for developments along known technological paths." Yulo interrupted. "Humans took different paths. Where we refined existing technologies, they explored alternatives. While we perfected matter-energy conversion, they developed quantum-shifted states that exist partially outside normal spacetime. While we enhanced neural interfaces with artificial constructs, they evolved their own biology to create organic quantum networks." "And we missed all of this?" Vrex asked incredulously. "We saw what we expected to see," Yulo admitted, "and they showed us what they wanted us to see. Until now." The display shifted to show footage of human ships appearing and disappearing, operating with impossible coordination, and deploying technologies that defy council understanding. "Their silence isn't about communication," Yulo concluded. "It's about revelation." In a secure chamber adjoining the main council room, Kira Sen and Dr. Kella Tuven examined the mysterious package that had appeared in the council's central archives 12 hours earlier. No one had seen it delivered. Security recordings showed nothing. It had simply manifested. "Quantum displacement technology," Kella murmured, scanning the small black box bearing the Earth emblem. "They can transport objects without conventional matter transmission." Kira carefully placed her hand on the box's smooth surface. A soft blue light scanned her palm, and the box opened with a gentle hiss. Inside lay a single data crystal and a handwritten note in Universal Standard Script. "What you refuse to hear." When the crystal was inserted into a secure reader, its contents proved more devastating than any weapon. It contained records, thousands of them, documenting every human attempt to warn, assist, or advance the Council over the past century. Each warning ignored, each offer of help dismissed, each scientific insight ridiculed until the Council eventually reached the same conclusion years later. Most damning were the predictions: spatial rifts that destroyed colonies, pathogen mutations that caused epidemics, resource shortages that led to conflicts. In each case, humans had provided specific warnings with proposed solutions, and in each case, the Council had dismissed them as alarmist or primitive. "They knew," Kira whispered. "They knew everything that would happen." "Not knew," Kella corrected. "Predicted. Their quantum neural network doesn't just connect minds. It processes probabilities at a level we can't comprehend. They've been running simulations of galactic events and trying to warn us about the results. The final file was different. Not a historical record, but a prediction of something yet to come. A massive quantum storm approaching from beyond the galactic rim, powerful enough to destroy all advanced technology and potentially end civilization as they knew it. Arrival estimate: 3 years. Attached was a simple message: "We can stop this. Together." The council chamber fell silent as Kira finished presenting the contents of the human archive. The implications were too enormous to interrupt with questions or objections. "There is one more thing," she said finally. "At the exact moment I finished reading the archive, every human communication system simultaneously reactivated. They've sent a single message to the Council." The main display activated to show the message. Just 3 words that somehow conveyed both warning and promise. "Are you listening?" "No." Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened silently. Ambassador Elena Chen walked in alone, without guards or aides. She wore a simple black uniform with no insignia or rank markings. Where she had once carried a translator pendant, a small silver device gleamed at her temple, the visible portion of humanity's neural network technology. The silence was absolute as she approached the central podium. No one tried to stop her. No one spoke. Every representative from every species watched as she took the position usually reserved for the High Speaker. "For 107 years, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. Humanity has been part of this council. For 107 years, we have watched, learned, and tried to contribute. For 107 years, you have treated us as children playing with technology we didn't understand. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. That ends today. With a small gesture, she activated a holographic display unlike anything the Council had seen before, a three-dimensional representation of the galaxy that showed energy flows, quantum fluctuations, and probability waves interacting in complex patterns. What you're seeing is a real-time model of our galaxy as processed by humanity's collective neural network. We've been monitoring these patterns for decades, using them to predict events like the Arcturus Rift and the coming quantum storm. The display zoomed in to show a massive disturbance approaching from beyond the galactic rim, the same threat documented in the archive. This will reach Council space in approximately 3 years. When it does, it will disable all conventional technology and collapse the quantum fields that make interstellar civilization possible. Everything you've built will end. Murmurs of alarm spread through the chamber. Unless, Elena continued, we work together to stop it. The display shifted again, showing a complex defensive system that would require technologies from multiple species working in concert. Humanity cannot solve this alone. We've developed quantum stabilization methods that can contain the storm, but we need Exorian phase crystals, Voxian gravity manipulators, and Zenteki dimensional anchors, technologies we don't possess. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from each mentioned species. This threat cannot be overcome by any one species. It will take all of us, working as equals, sharing our unique approaches and technologies without reservation. High Speaker Vrex finally found his voice. Why should we believe you? Why this theatrical demonstration instead of simply presenting your findings to the Council? Elena's expression remained composed. Because you wouldn't have believed us. You've dismissed our warnings 17 times in the past 5 years alone. Words were no longer sufficient. So instead you terrified the entire galactic community. An elder demanded. We showed you the truth, Elena corrected. That humanity has grown beyond what you thought we were. That we've been protecting you while you patronized us. That we've been developing solutions to problems you didn't even know existed. She stepped away from the podium, walking to the center of the chamber where everyone could see her clearly. Humanity is done being underestimated. We're done having our warnings ignored and our contributions dismissed. If this council wishes to continue with humanity as a member, it will be as true equals, with full acknowledgement of what we've become and what we can offer. And if we refuse, Vrex asked quietly, then we'll continue in silence. Elena replied simply, we'll protect our own territories from the coming storm while you face extinction. The choice is yours. She reached up and touched the neural implant at her temple. Instantly, the chamber was flooded with impressions, not words or images, but direct neural information transmitted to every representative present. For just a moment, they experienced humanity's perspective, the frustration of being ignored, the determination to prepare anyway, the commitment to protect life even when disrespected. When it ended, many representatives sat stunned, experiencing for the first time the true nature of human neural communication. That, Elena said into the silence, is how we talk to each other now. Direct, honest, complete. We invite you to join the conversation as equals. She turned to leave, then paused. You have one standard week to decide. After that, we return to silence, permanently. As she walked out, the chamber remained quiet, every representative contemplating the future of a galactic community forever changed by humanity's silence. 1 week later, Elena stood again in the council chamber. This time, the arrangement was different. Gone was the hierarchical seating that had placed older species in positions of privilege. Instead, representatives sat in a true circle, with no species elevated above others. High Speaker Vrex, now referred to simply as Facilitator Vrex, nodded to Elena. The Council has considered humanity's position, he announced, his tone notably lacking its former condescension. We accept the need for fundamental change in how we operate. A document appeared on every representative's display, a new galactic charter that recognized the unique contributions of all member species and established protocols for evaluating warnings and discoveries based on merit rather than origin. Furthermore, Vrex continued, we acknowledge humanity's predictions regarding the approaching quantum storm and propose the immediate formation of a multi-species task force to implement your defensive strategy. Elena nodded, sending a simple thought into the human neural network. Progress. The response came as a wave of cautious optimism from billions of connected humans across the galaxy. Humanity accepts these terms, she said aloud. We will share our quantum stabilization technology and work with the appointed task force. She touched her neural implant, and the holographic display activated once more. This time, it showed something new, a technology humans had developed but kept hidden until this moment. As a gesture of good faith, we offer this, a method for enhancing neural communication between species, not as advanced as our network, but a beginning, a way for us to truly understand each other beyond the limitations of translated words. The display showed the preliminary designs for interspecies neural translators, devices that could bridge the biological gaps between different forms of consciousness. True cooperation requires true understanding, Elena explained. These devices will allow each species to share experiences and knowledge directly, bridging differences that have divided us for centuries. As representatives began examining the designs with growing excitement, Elena permitted herself a small smile. The silence had served its purpose. Humanity had finally been heard, not because they had spoken louder, but because they had demonstrated the cost of not listening. In the space beyond the Council station, humanity's ships remained vigilant, still coordinating through the neural network, still prepared to defend, but no longer hidden. Their presence was neither a threat nor a submission but a promise that what humanity had become would help ensure a future for all. The galaxy had trembled when humanity fell silent. Now it would thrive as humanity spoke again, this time as equals.